The Rebbe asked what's the difference between simple oneness and attachment. The Rebbe answers that in every dveikut, in every attachment, there's two entities becoming one. The concept of pashut, of simple, means that the reality is not made of parts, but is simple. Simple is the opposite of made of parts. Meaning in the aspect of parts, there's all different elements. But in a simple situation, there's not many elements. There's just one. So when we're talking spirituality about dveikut, attachment, then there's just one reality. That's called simple oneness. That's not made of different parts. So we can say that every dveikut, every attachment, transforms the many parts to simple oneness. The Rebbe's asked if from the bitush it goes away the 10% completely, or has there remained an impression, a memory? The Rebbe says the answer is like this. The Or Makif, the surrounding light, is saying you need to receive 90%. But what comes out from all this? Comes out a smaller partsuf than the previous one. There's less light received, a smaller level. And afterwards even less and less. We see in drawing number 11. It gets less and less. So what does the surrounding light benefit here? Each time there's less. Wouldn't it have been better to just remain in the state of the first partsuf? The answer is that there's a general principle that there's no limitation in spirituality. Everything that Galgalta received remains. Everything that's received in order to give, to be pleasing to God, remains. But the created being doesn't see this. In order that the created being will continue the process, to receive more and more and more. The end of the process, everything that was received in order to give will all become revealed. Lots of small coins add up to a great wealth. So at the end of the process, the surrounding light does benefit. Because nothing's lost. At the end of the matter, everything becomes revealed. Everything's connected. All the masachim, all the power of the work comes together until there's one large ability to do work and one great light. Creator gave the ability for all of this. So it's not just that there remains a memory. The level itself remains. But it's not seen from below. It's forbidden for it to be seen from below. In order that the work can continue. On the third aspect and second aspect. Throughout the journey. And for this there does remain memories of the light. Every light that shines leaves behind it an impression. The Rebbe's asked, why is the ascension to the mouth? Is the mouth what's making the planning? The Rebbe says yes. Who's the mouth? The mouth is the malchut of the head. The malchut of the head is the guest that's mentioned in 15. That's deflecting all of the urging of the host. And afterwards transforms to become giver through the power of the returning light. And begins to think how much of the meal I'll be able to eat in order to give and how much no. So this is the mouth of the head. And this is what it says in the Parsha of Matot. It's forbidden not to keep our word. That everything that comes out of our mouth we're to do. This is forbidden with regard to vows. If we say something, then we need to do it. It's forbidden to make the things that we say to be unholy, to not do what we say. So here when we're talking spirituality, the speaking is the malchut of the head. How much she's going to receive in order to give. So this she then needs to do. So she does it in the middle and the end. And afterwards the surrounding light comes and torpedoes the whole system. So then needs to return to the malchut of the head to plan again. The Rebbe's asked if in the process of refinement the vessels remain without light until the next partsuf. If so, then there's a breaking. So why is what happens afterwards we call the breaking of the vessels? And this process of the refinement of the partsuf of Galgalta, we don't call it breaking of the vessels. The Rebbe says it's a good question. The answer is, in Partsuf Galgalta, the malchut didn't receive in order to receive the divine light. Because it suspected and it felt the danger, she decided from herself to stop to receive it all. That's it. If the 10% that I'm receiving is causing me this problem, so I won't receive anything. End of matter. Don't need it. I don't need the 10% and not the 90%. But in the breaking of the vessels, the created being did receive divine light in order to receive. It actually received. It received God for its own self-benefit. And that breaks the system. What does it mean it broke the system? It means that the vessels aren't fitting for receiving. Like a cup that's broken. Can't use it anymore. It's done. Throw it to the garbage. The same thing, if the vessel receives divine light in order to receive, so it can't use that vessel. This vessel in the aspect of holiness is broken. A vessel that received divine light in order to receive, that's it. It needs to be thrown to the garbage. But the partsuf of Galgalta only received in the right place. They're empty. They don't have light. They weren't broken. They didn't go outside of holiness. They stayed in holiness. The Rebbe's asked if there's a fixing in the level of Keter. that it went up and became refined and didn't receive anything.
אני מבין שאת שואלת על השלב האחרון בסרטוט 12 ו-11.
The Rebbe says, I understand that you're asking about the last aspect in drawing number 12.
זאת אומרת, הזיווג על אוביות השורש.
Meaning the zivug on the coarseness of the source, the light of nefesh.
אז באמת זה המצב הכי קטן של הנברא.
So, in actuality, that is the smallest level of the created being.
הודעה הכי קטנה שלו.
The smallest state.
יש שם תיקון.
And there is a fixing there.
יש שם תיקון, אחרת לא יאיר אור הנפש.
There's a fixing, otherwise there wouldn't shine the light of nefesh.
מה זה העבודה הזאת של אוביות השורש?
What is the work of the coarseness of the source?
אוביות השורש היא למעשה התכונה של הכתר.
The coarseness of the source is the characteristic of the keter.
מהי התכונה של הכתר?
What's the characteristic of keter?
רצונו להיטיב לנברא.
The desire to give goodness to creation. Desire to give.
כשהכלי מגיע למצב של אוביות השורש,
When the vessel reaches the coarseness of the source,
הפירוש הוא שהוא רוצה רק להשפיע.
it means that it wants only to give.
לקבל כלום.
Doesn't want to receive
לא
anything.
לקבל על מנת.
Not to receive in order to give.
להשפיע לבד.
It only wants to give.
המצב הזה נקרא גם עיבור.
This state is also called conception.
מה זה עיבור בגשמיות?
What's conception in physicality?
העובר נמצא ברחם של האם.
That the embryo is inside the womb of the mother.
והוא בטל ומבוטל שם.
It is nullified there.
הוא ניזון ממה שהאימא ניזונת.
Takes sustenance from what the mother is taking sustenance from.
לא מהצ'ונט שהיא אוכלת.
Not from what she's eating.
אבל כל התזונה שלה תהפכת להיות לדם.
But all of her sustenance is turned to blood.
נעש אצל העובר.
And is giving sustenance to the embryo.
זה מגדל אותו.
And growing it.
יש פה מערכת מתוחכמת מאוד.
Very complicated system.
בכל אופן, חכמים במסכת נידה,
The sages say in Masechet Nida
בתאים שהעובר הוא ירך עמו.
that the embryo is considered a limb of the mother.
העובר נידון כמו רגל של האם.
Like
לא נידון בכלל כישות עצמאית.
considered like a leg of the mother, like not as its own entity.
אלא כאיבר מהאיברים של האמא.
But like one of the limbs of the mother.
מה זה אומר?
What does this mean?
כשמדברים על עבודת האדם,
Then we're speaking about a person's spiritual work.
זה אומר שלמרות שלאדם יש רצון לקבל,
It means that even though a person has desire to receive,
ענק,
a great desire to receive,
אבל הוא
huge,
לא מפעיל אותו.
but they don't activate it.
הוא מתבטל לעליון.
The person nullifies to that which is above.
מתבטל.
Nullifies.
הוא לא מגלה את הישות שלו עצמו.
Doesn't reveal their own self outside.
למרות שיש לו רצונות,
Even though they have desires,
לא נותן להם.
but not giving them expression.
מתבטל לעליון.
They're nullifying to that which is above.
העבודה שיש בו אוביות דקטר.
This is the spiritual work of the coarseness of Keter,
אוביות דשורש.
the source of coarseness.
ולכן האור שם נקרא אור הנפש.
And therefore the light there is called the light of Nefesh.
כי נפש משמעותו נפישה.
Because Nefesh means Nefisha, means resting.
אז המושג של נפש זה אי פעולה.
So the concept of Nefesh is a concept of inaction.
מבחינתנו זאת עבודה גדולה.
From our aspect, this is a great work.
שהאדם יעשה את עצמו כאילו הוא איננו.
That a person makes themselves as if they are not.
עבודה גדולה.
Very hard work.
מה הכוונה שהוציא קומה חדשה של 10 ספירות?
The Rebbe asked, does it mean that there comes out another level of 10 sfirot?
הכוונה שיורד במדרגה לקומה נמוכה. כן.
The Rebbe asked if it means that it comes out a level that's lower. The Rebbe answers yes.
אבל מה יש בקומה הנמוכה?
But what's in this lower level?
כל מה שלמדנו באות ה'.
Everything we learned in number 5.
יש שם כתר.
There's Keter.
שמוליד את חוכמה, אור והרצון לקבל ביחד.
That gives birth to Chokhmah, the light and the vessel.
כך הרצון לקבל, מפסיק לקבל ורוצה להשפיע.
Afterwards, the desire to receive stops to receive and wants to give,
זה בינה.
which is Bina.
כך הרצון לקבל מתגעגע לקבל.
Afterwards, the desire to receive wants to receive,
לקבל קצת.
receives a little,
תפארת.
that's Tiferet.
כך הרצון לקבל, רוצה לקבל את הכל על מנת.
Afterwards, the desire to receive wants to receive everything in order to receive.
אז גם
Malchut.
גם בקומה החדשה, יש את אותם 10 ספירות הישנות.
So also in the new level, we have the same 10 sfirot.
אלא מה?
But what?
הזיווג שם
The zivug there that's made is made on a lower aspect. We learned that Malchut includes within her everything that brought her out. So she doesn't make any more the zivug on her own aspect, which is the fourth aspect, but only on the third aspect of the fourth aspect. So therefore comes out a smaller level, which is called the level of Chaya, which is not so in the Partzuf of Golgotha, where it's the level of Yechida. There's always 10 Sfirot. It's the same structure. 10 Sfirot that we learned in number 5. There's always the head, the middle, and the end. No difference. The difference is in the characteristic. What determines the characteristics in spirituality? So we gave here in the drawings. What makes the difference? In drawing 8, we see that in the right column we have a large coarseness, so it's made a large masach, and it comes out a large returning light, and then experience of a great light. But look at the other columns, there is less coarseness, so smaller masachim, so there's less returning light, and so the level that shines there is smaller. That's the difference. Difference is in what material we're working on. The more that the work is smaller, the characteristic is smaller. The Rebbe's asked if a lack in vessels means a lack in making use of them. So how does this apply to Malchut? The Rebbe answers, look at drawing number 5. What do we see in drawing number 5? We have Keter, Chochma, Bina, Tiferet, and Malchut. Now this Malchut, which is the big desire to receive, and only she is the creation, includes within her that which brought her out. She includes in her the Keter, Chochma, Bina, and Tiferet. And she has also her own aspect, called the Malchut of the Malchut. So where's the biggest desire to receive? In the Malchut of the Malchut. Tiferet is a less desire to receive. Bina even less. Chochma even less. Keter even less. So all of this is in the Malchut. Now, look again at drawing number 12. In the right column, we have the Partzuf of Galgalta. The Malchut makes a zivug on what? 5 vessels. Which 5 vessels? The 5 vessels that are within the Malchut. What we saw now in drawing number 5. Afterwards in Partzuf Ab, makes a zivug daka only on 4 vessels. Which 4 vessels? The ones that are within the Malchut. We're all speaking within the Malchut until the Partzuf Ban, which is the smallest Partzuf, where the Malchut makes zivug daka on Keter. Which Keter? The Keter that's within the Malchut. Everything we're speaking about is within the created being. The difference between the Partzufim is in the measure of the work that the Malchut is doing on the oviyut of itself. And according to that, everything draws out, like we saw in drawing number 8. The Rebbe is asked, when the light's refined, the Rebbe says the light isn't refined. So the question isn't worded right. It means when the Masach becomes refined. When the Masach becomes refined in a sense of the head, then the zivug of the level is not made in the same level, like the previous level. Can you explain this more? Look at drawing number 9. The Malchut makes a great work on its largest level of coarseness. So everything there is big. Big Masach, big returning light. And there God becomes revealed to the level of Keter. But afterwards, the Malchut doesn't have the ability to make this work on fourth aspect of coarseness because of the danger of the bitush. So she moves on to do work only on the third aspect. Do you see that the third aspect is less coarse? So also the Masach is smaller, more thin. And also the returning light is less. And also the revealment of God is less. So that's the answer. That the zivug is always made on a smaller level. The Rebbe is asked how the surrounding light influences the partsuf. The Rebbe says the surrounding light is a very big light that the partsuf is not able to receive. But it shines an illumination from a distance. What is the meaning of this illumination from a distance? It's like the difference between what's ideal and what is. This means a person standing in prayer, persons depicting to themselves how would it be if God's glory was filling the world. Person depicts to themselves how the person would act, nullifying to God, and everything the person would be doing would all be according to the will of God. And it would be like that in the whole world. All of the world would be nullified to God's desire. Then the person looks, what's happening? And the person sees the great difference between the ideal and what is. It's a huge gap. So that's the material of prayer. This means at the time of prayer, a person needs to connect oneself to the ideal, to depict it. The more that the depiction is more alive and more clear, it's called an illumination that's bigger, the surrounding light. And then it makes within the person a greater lack. The more the surrounding light is bigger, the bitush is bigger. The Rebbe is asked, why does the process go from the coarseness of 4 to 3 to 2 instead of ascending? Isn't it supposed to be the opposite? So Rebbe says, look at the drawing. Drawing number 11. What do we see there? See a process of descending. This means that each time the ability of the Malchut is less, so it goes down. Drawing number 12, we see the process of ascension. Why? Because in drawing number 12, we're not checking the ability of the Malchut. in relation to the general state. We're simply looking at what it's doing. First, it made use of 5 vessels. Now it's only making use of 1 vessel. This is called ascension. Why? From the aspect that it's equating its characteristic to that of above. The same way that above there's no receiving, so also below is not receiving. It's like Yom Kippur. On Yom Kippur, do we go up or go down? We're considered that we ascend. Why? We're not eating, not drinking, not washing, cleaning ourselves from all of the making use of our body, not receiving. So we're not receiving or becoming similar to the angels, all in white. It's considered an ascension. But if you look at the reason, what's the reason? The Malchut is each time making use of less. She's not able anymore. She's not able anymore. So then it's descending. So it depends if we're looking at the reality, the situation, or at the reason. If we're looking at the reason, then it's a going down. If we're looking at the reality, so it's a going up. Each time it's becoming more and more refined. Less desire to receive. The Rebbe asks if there's always a differentiation between the surrounding light and the inner light. So the fixing will never be finished. There'll always be 10% and 90%. How we finish the fixing? The answer is that each time the inner light of the lower partsuf is part of the surrounding light of above. So in actuality, as we're going down, we're receiving more light of the surrounding light. More of the surrounding light is becoming inner light. Each partsuf is receiving surrounding light from what was before. The truth is, at the end of the matter, God finishes the fixing and not us. The end of the matter, the final process, the end is done by God. The Rebbe asks, how can divine light be received in order to receive? Because we learned that the Tzimtzum made it that we're not able to receive in order to receive. The Rebbe says it's a great question. The Rebbe says the answer is that God, in all God's glory, created the situation of the breaking of the vessels so that the divine light would shine into the vessels of receiving in order to receive. Why did God do this? Because from here this gives birth to all the system of the klipot, of the unholiness, the shells. And God has a reason that we have free choice. That God made this corresponding to this. That we'd have choice. Because it's good for us to struggle and to choose. Now, if the klipot, the shells, had no light, who would go in that direction? What would they have to sell to us? Why would we go in that direction? So all of these processes, including the breaking of the vessels, were made to set up the system of the klipot. The Rebbe asks, how can we explain that sometimes we feel that instead of growing and developing, we're given the same situations again from God, but the feeling is that we're going backwards and not progressing. instead of in order to give. There's a going down. How does this fit in with the partsufim? The Rebbe says this goes with drawing number 11, where we see the partsufim are going down. This we need to explain in a basic way. God wants only one thing, us to progress. So therefore, when a person's making a lot of real work, real serious big work, so God, instead of raising the person up, that they'll be all the time filled with divine light, brings the person down to be even more worse than they were before. Why does God do this? The answer is God wants a person to progress. So it brings a person to harder and harder trials. This is what the sages say, that one who becomes bigger than their friend, their desires are bigger. That's the progression. We're not going backwards. We're progressing. Like, for example, in school, a kid with small abilities is given small projects. If the person gets better, then they're given bigger projects. The more that the kid becomes stronger, given bigger trials, put more on their shoulders. This is progressing, it's not going down. We need to understand this. But what? We're working with our desire to receive. We want to be paid. We want God to bring us to a state of great light. Someone who's in a regular unit and brought to higher one, what, they're given roses? The Rebbe's asked if the fixed vessels come to expression only in Ban, and we, the created beings, do work only in Ban. The Rebbe says we begin from below to above. So we begin from the Ban, but after that we need to ascend to Ma, and after Ma we need to ascend to Sag. We begin from below. The beginning is called conception, which is the lowest level. After conception we need birth. After birth there's nursing, and so on. The Rebbe is asked who sweats more in their work, Partzuf Galgalta or Partzuf Ab. The Rebbe says it depends if he's working inside in the air conditioning or outside in the sun. Who sweats more? This is something there could be different ways of explaining it. From the side of the nature, so Galgalta is the most refined, but for its work it's taking the most refined aspects. Partzuf Ab is more coarse, but for its work it's taking smaller work. So who's sweating more? Depends. The Rebbe's asked, why is Keter called Keter? If there the Masach is on Daled, the greatest desire to receive, so why is it called Keter? Because the nature of Galgalta is the nature of Keter. To picture yourself a very great tzaddik, righteous person, very refined, that is given the most disgusting work to deal with. The tzaddik is able to deal with it. Imagine to yourself. Imagine comes to you the home a guest with stinky rags filled with lice, completely crazy in the head. If you deal with someone like this, give them to sleep, give them a bed, give them to come into your house. The most righteous person who's very refined could deal with this, no problem. The Rebbe's asked, is it true to say that the work of the created being is only on our desires? The Rebbe says yes, certainly. The Rebbe says we'll end here. There's a lesson in Zohar this evening to prepare the books, and most importantly to prepare our hearts.